Hi, I'm John Pototschnik. Thanks for joining me for this video. I think I have something quite special to offer you. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever done a monochromatic painting? By that I mean, have you done a painting in black and white or umber and white? Just those colors to determine value? If you haven't, it'd be a great exercise and would really help your work because it is value that establishes the mood of a painting. So in this video, you're going to see me create a monochromatic painting, and then I'm going to add color on top of that. It's just a tremendous help in showing that value is what creates the mood of a painting, and then color enhances that mood. So thank you for joining me. You know, when we're talking about value, we're talking about a range of values from white to black and everything in between. When I've worked with students, one of the things I ask them to do is create a grayscale, and what I discovered is, surprisingly actually, that they have a very difficult time creating a grayscale. So it's important to be able to do one, and I want to show you what I mean by that. Here's a grayscale that is white on this end, black on this end, and it's a 9-step grayscale. And I like a 9-step because it puts 5 right in the middle as a middle value. And then it's easy then from that point, once this is determined what the number 5 is, then from there you would split the difference between the white and the middle value and come up with number 3. And then from number 3 and the white, you could determine number 2, and then from the 3 and the gray, the number 5, you can determine the number 4 grayscale, and you do the same on this end. And it's easier that way to split it, to divide it up into 9 sections. The difficulty that people have is they don't get enough distinction between each one of these values, and that's why just creating the grayscale to help you to actually understand value, but to create that grayscale, it will really be helpful to you. So what you want to do is make sure when you're creating one that you have a clear distinction between each one of these values. And then I use it on my palette also. I have it set right here on my palette beside under the glass, that I can mix a value up and test it against that grayscale. But then once a grayscale is created, you can also punch holes in it, which I've done here, and you can see this grayscale's been used quite a bit. But I punch holes in it, and then this can be laid directly over the value that you're trying to establish and make sure that you have created the right value for that painting and where you want it. I want to show you some of the value studies I have done that demonstrate that value, the light and dark patterns in a painting actually create that mood. And so here's a couple of value studies I did. The top one is more dramatic, of course, than the bottom one. Darker sky, and it lends a bit of mystery to this painting. Totally different mood than the one below it, which was done plein air, which is a great exercise, by the way. If you want to grow as a painter, just go outside with some black and white paint and try to create a painting just using those 2 colors. It'd be a tremendous help to you in your growth as an artist. Here's another value study done, just using black and white. But I just want to stress over and over again that if you get the values right here and achieve the mood that you're after in your painting, then the application of color is a much simpler process, because what we're doing is we are separating the value from the color. I want to really get across to you that value sets the mood of a painting, color enhances it. And I'm sure you can all understand and see that. And it's demonstrated here pretty much in these value studies. I mean, you should be able to tell from each one of these value studies that you do what the mood is, what the time of day might be, the direction of the light, all those things. That's where they're achieved here in these little value studies. And so I do a lot of these almost always in preparation for my paintings. And this particular piece here is the starting point of what my demo will be today. So I'll show that again later. But this was the preliminary work, the preparation work for what I'm going to demonstrate in this video. And then here's another example of a night scene created. And this was the photograph that I worked from. This was a daylight scene of this little neighborhood. But I wanted to show in this that its value, that even from a daylight scene, one can create a night scene if the values are correct. And that's what I did with this particular piece. It created a night scene of this little neighborhood just using value. And then from that, to demonstrate how it would look in color, I added color to it, matching those values, and has a really dramatic feeling to it of nighttime. So finally, for this video, I've created this as my study for the monochromatic that I'm going to be doing. And I will use these values to create it. What I'm creating here is a sunset scene. So remember, if we're looking into the sun, everything then is backlit. And so it's going to have to be darker. Everything in the foreground here is going to have to be darker in order to make that feel like it is backlit and the dramatic setting of the sun behind it. And that's the intention of this monochromatic. If I can establish the correct mood in the monochromatic painting that I'm going to do for you, when we apply the color later, it should work just fine and maintain that feeling of a sunset. So that's what I want to do with my monochromatic, is create this feeling of sunset. Remember, this is backlit, so I'm going to lay in the values of the house first. I picked a middle value for this. Just want to get this. Picked a middle value for this, and everything else will be based on that. It looks really dark right now for a white house, but I think when I'm done, it should look great. Oh, I wanted to tell you why I picked raw umber rather than, say, ivory black and white. And that is that it's a very earthy brown, and I think it works well with the landscape that I'm going to portray here in shadow. I thought it was a nice tone for those greens that I want, those earthy greens that I want. Oh, by the way, I wanted to tell you that the board I'm using is a ampersand gesso board. And the size I'm working on here is, the board is 12 by 12. I've taped off the edges a little bit, so it ends up about 11 by 11. But that's the size I'm doing. This is a really nice board. It's smooth, and I like a smooth surface. So I'm just working out the middle value right now. It's all about the mood here. I want to get the mood that I'm after. I want to show you over here. I put my value study underneath a clear piece of acetate. I mean, it's crystal clear. So I can lay my values right on top of that, and you can see it shows up pretty clearly that value is off if I was using this for the grassy area. So anyway, that's a really handy tool. I use it a lot in my studio. Put my studies under this, and then I can work my values out from that. And that way, this actually means something when I come up here. Okay. Get my darks in here. I'll come back and refine everything. I just want to get the general values down here first so that I can see the painting as a whole. Direction of the sun will be right here, so I'm bearing all that in mind as I lay in these values. Okay, we're going to stop there. That would be the monochromatic block in, and when we come back, we're going to start applying color to this. But I wanted to show you something just before we close out on this. This piece right here, I showed you this at the beginning. This is the study, which I'll show you when we start the color. This is a study that I used for a full color painting. And then you can see we took a section of this whole painting and we cropped it, made a square out of it. This would be an unsuccessful value study to depict a sunset. And you can see all the values are spotty. For the backlit, the subject is not, for the scene being backlit, the subject is not dark enough because we lose the impact of the sunset right through there. The house is way too light, too much darks just scattered around and unrelated. So I did this one to show you what a poor value study would be, to depict the time of day and what we wanted to communicate about the piece. The thing that's unclear about this piece too is the viewer is not sure where the light comes from. We're not sure of the time of day. We're not sure of the direction of the light. So it makes for a confusing value study. And I see this a lot in student work. So it's really important to come up with your mood ahead of time, what you want to create, and then establish that with a monochromatic. And then once that is set, you'll see how we apply color to it. Well, I hope you enjoyed the monochromatic block in and see the value in it. If you'll try that, I guarantee it will really help your painting. I want to show you what the next step would be. This is an 8x10 painting that I did, also doing a monochromatic block in, and you can see here, in this case I used ivory black and white, but exactly the same process as this. In this case I used raw umber and white, but the process is exactly the same. So I take this one off just to demonstrate the fact that what I try to do next is to match the values that have already been created. And you can see how close these values are when I went in with the color. And I'm going to do the same here. And you'll just see this painting started to come alive. And like I said before, the value sets the mood, the color elevates it. It brings it up. It increases the mood. But this is the direction we're going to go, and I will do a full color painting here, applying the color to match these values. Otherwise, if I don't match these values, this really doesn't mean anything. The whole purpose of this is to establish the value structure first, and then it's separated from color, and then we will add the color to it, matching these values. And if the value structure creates the mood that I'm after in this case, then when I apply the color, it should also, matching these values, it should also just enhance it, bring it all up a level. I want to talk about the palette I'm going to use. Again, I use two whites when I'm working in the studio. I use a Palmalba white and I use a Griffin Alkyd white. The reason I do that is the Griffin Alkyd white speeds up the drying. And when I'm outdoors painting, that's the only white I use because it does dry fast. For instance, if I lay in a sky when I'm painting outdoors, by the time I get back and want to lay tree branches over it or whatever, that sky is tacky enough that I can do that without, mixing paint, so to speak, mixing in the fine brush strokes of the tree branches with the background. They'll stay separate. But in the studio, I mix these half and half, and that's what I have here, a mixture of half Palmalba and half Alkyd white, and both of these are titanium whites. And then for this painting, I've chosen to use ultramarine blue, alizarin crimson, and cadmium yellow pale. As you know, probably if you followed my work at all, you know I really stress using a limited palette, and this is a very limited palette, of course. And I wrote a book which is called Limited Palette, Limited Color. Limited Palette, Unlimited Color. But this is a book I wrote using exactly the same palette, ultramarine blue, alizarin crimson, cadmium yellow pale. And you can see there's all kinds of variations. What I did is I took the color wheel and I broke it down into segments, into triads, into quadratics, into analogous, and into the dominant color, and I created 46 different palettes using just these three primaries. So if one says, well, you're really not using a limited palette, yes, the palette is limited because I'm still, with all the mixtures, different mixtures that I choose, I'm still using just these three primaries. But I'll make mixtures from these, but the palette is still a limited palette of just three primaries. I want to show this again. This is the value study that I did for the painting. If you look up here, you can see this is the completed painting. Of course, these are photographs, so they don't represent the painting exactly as it was with all its subtleties. But this is a photograph of the complete painting. This was, I think, a 12 by 24 painting. And that is the whole painting. This was the value study I did for it prior to doing that. And then I did a color study determining the palette, and that's how I came up with these. And how the palette was determined is the whole foreground, everything about this painting is in shadow except for the sky, the sunset. So I didn't need brilliant color down here. That's why I chose an alizarin crimson rather than, say, a cad red. Alizarin would work fine because it still gives me the richness of the oranges and the yellows that I wanted in the sky. So alizarin crimson was a good choice. It's a cooler red. It has a little bit of blue in it, which I thought also would tie in with the coolness of all the landscape here. And then the cadmium yellow pale is a warm yellow, and that mixed with the alizarin crimson would give me the oranges that I was after. So that's why that particular palette was selected. Over here, I wanted to show you, this was done with raw umber. But before this video, I was testing to see, well, would I be satisfied with doing an underpainting in using ivory black and white? And so I ran this test here. And you can see here, I did an ivory black and white underpainting and started applying color to it, and it just felt too cold to me. It didn't feel like the warmth that I wanted out of the painting. So this little spot here, I used the raw umber underpainting, just like I did here. I used raw umber and then tried the same palette that I'm using here, the same palette again, with raw umber underpainting, and I like this much better. It gave me the feel I wanted. The primaries I'm using, again, are ultramarine blue, alizarin crimson, cadmium yellow pale. Cadmium yellow pale is a specific color to Winsor Newton. They're the only ones that make it. And it's slightly different, as you know. Colors differ from different manufacturers, but this Winsor Newton is the only one that names their yellow cadmium yellow pale. But if you went to another brand like a Gamblin brand or a Utrecht brand, some of those others, they may be a different name like a cadmium yellow medium or something like that. And it'll be very close, not identical. This is a color wheel I prepared, and also it's a great way to learn what your palette will do for you. So I have a number of these color wheels I've created using different primaries, and it's just a wonderful way to have it all sorted out so that you know, okay, if I use a cadmium yellow pale here with an ultramarine blue, I'm going to get these greens. But say, for instance, this was a cobalt blue or cerulean blue, you kept the same yellow, these greens would look different. So you'd need a different color wheel for that. These three primaries mixed together yield this 12-step color wheel. So this yellow with that red creates that red-orange, orange, and yellow-orange. Same with the greens, and same with the violets. A real important lesson to learn is that there are different kinds of blues, different kinds of reds, different kinds of yellows. Even in each one of those families, there are some warm yellows and there are some cool yellows. Cool meaning it has a little more blue and a little more green in it. A warm yellow would have a little more to the red, leaning to the red side a little bit warmer in color. You think of fire, think of those colors for warmth. And same in the reds, all kinds of reds. There's very warm cadmium reds, and then there's the cool reds, the quinacridins and the alizarins and all that. And you can see the difference. That alizarin has quite a bit of blue in it compared to a cadmium red, and that's pretty obvious when you put them side by side. Same with the blue. Some blues are cooler than others. Ultramarine blue I consider a warm blue because when you place it next to a cerulean blue or a cobalt blue, for example, you'll notice that the ultramarine blue feels a little bit warmer, which means it has a little bit of red in it. So the point of this is that if you want the richest orange you could get, you would not use an alizarin crimson and say in this case a lemon yellow. I mean, you could put a lemon yellow up there, or even in this case a cadmium yellow. You would not get the richest orange that way. This red would have to be a warm red along with a warm yellow to get the richest possible orange you could get. But for my painting, I wasn't interested in having these brilliant rich oranges because of the rest of the painting, which was a cool painting. So even in that context, with a really cool foreground, everything in shadow, and cool, basically cool, the sky, even though I'm using a cool red, that sky will still be plenty warm in the context, and it makes for a very harmonious painting. Again, if I want, for instance here, I'm using ultramarine blue and alizarin crimson. That will give me the richest violets using these two. Picture that red there as a cadmium red. If that's mixed with ultramarine blue, what has happened? That cadmium red has yellow in it. So now I've got yellow, and I've got red, and I've got blue. All three primaries. So what happens? Whenever you have three primaries together, you are dulling a color. You're moving it to neutral, you're moving it even towards the browns. So if you eliminate the third primary, which in this case is yellow, alizarin crimson does not have yellow in it, it only has blue and red. Ultramarine blue does not have yellow in it, it only has blue and red in it. You've only used two primaries with both of these, and so you're going to create the richest violet. If I switched this to cerulean blue and kept the alizarin, that violet would not be near as rich. That red violet would not be near as rich as that. It would be much duller. So those are just important considerations when I do a painting. I consider all those things ahead of time before I select the palette. What I would like to do now is mix up a few of these major colors. Like I'd like to get that house color. That's an important one. Get some of this ground color, some of these darks. I'd like to get those. And then I think we're going to be okay. I can then start laying the color on here. So let me try and go for that color first. It has a kind of a bluish violet feel to it, which is kind of a complement of yellow-orange, isn't it? So that would make sense, being turned away from the light, that house might appear a little bit, even though it's a white house, might appear a little bit blue-violet. So I'm going to start with some blue-violet. My choice would be to remove that totally from my palette, just so I'm not tempted to dip into it. But hopefully, if I do dip into it, just holler at me and tell me, no, you dipped into it. Shouldn't do that. But I'll try to not to do that. So I want to work it just out of this group right here, plus the white, of course. So let's go for that. So it's got white in it right off. So I'm going to put some blue-violet down. Put some white in that. And you can see, really, I'm way off, quite a bit off. So that's been neutralized. It's not an intense blue-violet. So, I'll tell you what, I'm going to put some of this back. I kind of have to work toward it. I'll be working towards it to see what I need to do to get there. I need to neutralize that, so I'm going to go in with a little bit of yellow-orange, which is its neutral. Cut that back a little bit. In other words, take the intensity of the violet out. That feels a little too, that's pretty close actually. Looks different here, but that's pretty close. Could use maybe just a little, man, that is very close. Could use maybe just a little more. Might try a little green in that, see what that does to it. Might have messed it up, but we'll see. That's not bad. I think I'll try that. I'll just lay some of that in and see what happens. Okay, so I'm going to lay in these colors. Lay this color on there. It should match that value or be very close to it. Oops, too dark. So I've got to lighten it. So that's darker than this a little bit. Okay. Lighten it. I may have to do some adjustments here. That's still a little dark. I find a lot of students that I've worked with, they have a really hard time seeing the value of color. And it is tricky. I mean, you look at color, and if it's, for instance, a really bright, intense color like an orange or a yellow or something like that, they'll think, oh, that is really light. And yet, it's darker than they sometimes realize. So that's another good reason to go with a monochromatic block in. I want to be pretty as true as I can to my original concept here. And the concept, of course, is sunset, backlit. So I've got to do everything I can to make sure I follow through with that, and it feels very natural all the way through. Feels true to what I'm saying I want it to be. Okay. Probably hard to see some of this at this point, but hopefully you are seeing, oh, yep, the color's changing. It'll all come together in time. It's almost magical how this starts to develop, and it's, wow, that's surprising. It can be stunning too. Well, welcome back. We took a short break and we're ready to continue finishing up this painting. I'm going to work on the light on the trees right now, at least lay some of that color in. I'm thinking, you know, this is going to catch a little bit of sunlight from the sun there, so that's going to be a warmer, and also here. That's why I left that the way I did it. You still see the underpainting there. So I'll lay in this and then we'll go from there, see how we're doing. I want to get these edges quite soft. Push my brush up a little bit, softens those edges. Yeah, I can go in there with, I'll go in there and lighten that up a little bit, but it's kind of a good starting point. I hope y'all all tried this limited palette, which I'm using for this painting based on those three primaries: ultramarine blue, alizarin crimson, and cabin yellow pale. And then, you know, find different divisions of the color wheel, which, you know, they'll stretch you a little bit, but you're going to really enjoy the process and what you're going to learn by trying things that, I can't possibly get the color I want using that particular palette. And then you'll discover, no, it's really pretty amazing what I can achieve. So, yeah, I think you need to try it. Just like to get these edges where they feel pretty natural rather than real hard-edged. Do the same on the other tree. And then this can use a little more light, and this will need some more light also, but I'll lay in this tone here first. This mixture I'm putting down is just the green and the alizarin crimson. they're complements, and so what the alizarin crimson has done has neutralized the green. In other words, grayed it quite a bit, and that works really well in this environment here. So, and then it's got a little bit of white in it, of course, to get it to the value I want. It's still a little, well, what I'm putting down now is fine, but I'm going to have to go in some areas and lighten some areas up. It's nice that we took that break and the sky has dried a little bit, and so it makes it nice to be able to work over it without picking up what's underneath. This is really going to catch some of that sunlight on that edge. Now this is another little kind of a small tree in front of it, and I'm going to make that even a little more intense. So I'm going to add a little white to that, and I'm just going to lighten it. Kind of the same mixture, the green and the red. Let's see what this does for us. Put a little orange in this.
Capturing the perfect mood in your paintings can be a tricky challenge. But what if there were a simple way to create art that not only looks good, but feels emotionally resonant? According to Art Renewal Center's living master artist, John Pototschnik, the secret lies not in color, but in value.
What I'm doing is I'm separating value from color. That is huge, because once you learn values, your paintings will immediately improve.
With decades of experience and a passion for teaching, John is here to share his brilliant approach to painting. His unique value-first approach will transform your art from just another landscape painting into an emotionally charged masterpiece. Inside Painting Values in Color, John will walk you through the creation of a monochromatic value underpainting. You'll learn how to set the emotional tone of your work using value alone, and then amplify it with color. It's a paradigm shift that will elevate your art to new heights. You'll also discover the art of color mixing with just 3 primaries, leading to harmonious results without the need for additional tubes of paint.
You see, with the limited palette, I'm having to pull from all of these in order to get the mixtures I want, and so that automatically makes all the colors related and harmonized beautifully.
With John's expert instruction guiding you every step of the way, you'll soon notice the difference in results. Don't miss this chance to learn from a living master. Elevate your art and connect with your audience like never before. Take home your copy of Painting Values in Color today and paint not just with color, but with emotion, depth, and understanding.
Hi, I'm John Pototschnik. I'm an artist working in the fine arts. I'm a landscape painter, and I work in oil. I worked as a freelance illustrator for 10 years in Dallas from 1972 to 1982. And then in the illustration field started changing about 1982 or so, maybe a little prior to that. I noticed a lot of illustrators leaving the field and getting into fine art. And I had always wanted to be in the fine art, but was told I'd never make a living at it. And so in 1982, I made the leap into painting. And the part I enjoy most about painting is the freedom that I have as a painter. In the illustration field, of course, you're always trying to work for an art director or meet a client's expectation. In the fine arts and in painting, I'm able to paint what I want in the way I want it. And I feel now that my true personality and my true temperament, all that is showing through my painting, and I think that's what I enjoy the most. What inspires me to keep painting after being in this business as a fine artist for more than 30 years, it's the whole idea of creating, trying new things, experimenting, seeing my work improve is huge. But, you know, I'm in the business to sell paintings. And so when someone enjoys my paintings and is willing to put the money out to purchase them, and I hear from them periodically and feel that appreciation and love for the work I do, that is very satisfying. And that really does help. That encouragement keeps me going. But I think there's just a need to create. There's something when one creates that there's a sense of accomplishment and satisfaction that oftentimes we don't get in other lines of work. And I think we're really blessed in that way to be an artist and to be able to create things and see a product that has come off of our hands. I'm best known for landscape painting, and I'm drawn to that subject matter because as a child, my grandparents lived on a farm. One set of my grandparents lived on a farm, and we visited there. I grew up in a fairly small Midwestern town. It was close to the country. I always liked the outdoors, enjoyed the farm, enjoyed the country, and so it is just a natural outgrowth of my childhood. I think I'm ending up painting my memories and all my experiences, a lot of my experiences growing up. I find peace in the country too. It's open and it's not congested, and you can feel the wind and the breeze and the smells and hear the bugs and all the animals. All that stuff appeals to me, and I like to be able to capture those kinds of moods and feelings in my work. The important thing for an artist is to paint what they're passionate about and what they know. If they love painting the figure and the challenge of it and the different moods that can be expressed through figurative painting, that's what they should be painting. It just happens in my life and because of my childhood that I mentioned earlier, is that I'm drawn to the landscape. I'm drawn to all the moods of landscape. I love the outdoors, so that's why I paint the landscape. But not everybody should paint the landscape if they're not passionate about it. So I'd say paint your passion. Paint what you know. Don't paint a subject just because you think there's a market for it. I'd say certainly be honest with yourself. Paint what you know and what you love and what you're passionate about. There will be a market for it. My style of painting is sometimes hard to describe. An article was done on me several years ago, and they described my painting as naturalism. And I like that word a lot. Naturalism to me is I'm not trying to enhance necessarily or romanticize. Naturalism came about because of the classical movement, and they were saying that the classical elevated and idealized the subject. I try not to idealize the subject. However, I do clean things up a little bit to make it a little more pleasing. I use oil because it suits my temperament. I worked as an illustrator. I worked in watercolor and Dr. Martin dyes and acrylic, but oil painting is flexible. It doesn't dry as fast. Of course, watercolor doesn't either, but oil is more, I can manipulate it. I can put something down. If I don't like it, I can take it out. The most difficult thing about oil painting is painting. I'm more of a smooth painter. In other words, my surfaces are smooth and more brushed out. I appreciate the painters that use more textural quality to their oil painting and broader brush strokes and all that. It doesn't necessarily suit my temperament, so I struggle with that. But I would like to learn how to do that a little better, how to be a little more expressive with the paint. I love the paintings that when I have a vision in my mind as to the mood I want to create, that I'm able to accomplish that mood and really get the feel of what I had in my mind and capture nature as I feel it. When I can do that, I think that's a successful painting, and those, of course, are the standouts to me. I've seen some real development in my recent work, and they are receiving awards. I think one of the last paintings I completed that I was really proud of when I did it, and I thought it was special, but when it received the silver medal at the Oil Painters of America National Show, that kind of confirmed what I had been feeling, that it was a good painting. And so that one I'm very proud of. I have favorites for different reasons, but I would say this painting called Be Still My Soul, which recently won that silver medal, is at least it's on my mind right now, is one of my favorite paintings. My unique style is created by color because I think every individual has their own color sense. I think their personality and temperament lead them to choose certain colors. So that is certainly the case with me. And then limiting that palette, I think, has greatly helped me to use it in an effective way, because I don't have so many colors I have to concern myself with, and I have learned with a limited palette that I can create about any mood that I want in nature. To use a limited palette means obviously a small number of colors, tube colors that one would put on the palette. People have different ideas of what limited would mean. I mean, some would call it probably 10 colors limited. In fact, I've read that in places. They say I'll use a limited palette, but there's 10 colors on their palette. Mine is very strictly limited in that mine is usually just the 3 primaries plus white. Once in a while, I will add 1 or 2 other colors. But I would say for me, a limited palette is probably 5 or less colors. A limited palette, I think, has really helped harmonize my paintings and has given me a little more, believe it or not, a little more freedom to express myself as far as color goes. It simplifies my working methods. And I have learned that by being forced to use all of the color on the palette to mix certain colors, that the painting automatically ends up harmonious, and that is super important to me, that I have a harmonious painting and not some color that's stuck in there that doesn't relate with the others. So by using a limited palette, I'm forced to intermix everything, and therefore it ends up a much better painting. I enjoy the challenge of it, the effects that one can get, and the surprises. It's just, it's never ending. And if one changes up the primaries, then you can start all over again, and it's just a whole new challenge and new experimentation and a new joy. So it's endless with me. I love the limited palette. I love the possibilities of it. I love the challenges of it. All that to me is fine. I seem to be able to mix every color that I need. So it just simplifies, for me, the whole working process. The hardest thing about mixing color with a limited palette, I think the tendency would be is we are trying to match exactly the color we're seeing. For instance, if we're painting out in landscape, out in nature, plein air, and we're trying after a certain green, and we may not be able to achieve that certain green with the particular colors we have selected for our palette. So I think getting beyond the fact that I've got to match exactly the color that I see is, I think, difficult part. Once you overcome that and just concern yourself with creating a harmonious painting and giving the effect or the impression of what you're seeing, it works great. So I would encourage each of you students to do exactly the same thing. Mix the color, and you'll learn, and you'll see the benefits of it. I can teach it and I can tell you the benefits of it, but until you try it, and I've heard from many students I've taught over the years that say, my goodness, I'm glad you taught me what you did. It's really helped me. And I know it will help everyone that watches this video also, if you try it.
Capturing the perfect mood in your paintings can be a tricky challenge. But what if there were a simple way to create art that not only looks good, but feels emotionally resonant? According to Art Renewal Center's living master artist, John Pototschnik, the secret lies not in color, but in value.
What I'm doing is I'm separating value from color. That is huge, because once you learn values, your paintings will immediately improve.
With decades of experience and a passion for teaching, John is here to share his brilliant approach to painting. His unique value-first approach will transform your art from just another landscape painting into an emotionally charged masterpiece. Inside Painting Values in Color, John will walk you through the creation of a monochromatic value underpainting. You'll learn how to set the emotional tone of your work using value alone, and then amplify it with color. It's a paradigm shift that will elevate your art to new heights. You'll also discover the art of color mixing with just 3 primaries, leading to harmonious results without the need for additional tubes of paint.
You see, with the limited palette, I'm having to pull from all of these in order to get the mixtures I want, and so that automatically makes all the colors related and harmonized beautifully.
With John's expert instruction guiding you every step of the way, you'll soon notice the difference in results. Don't miss this chance to learn from a living master. Elevate your art and connect with your audience like never before. Take home your copy of Painting Values in Color today and paint not just with color, but with emotion, depth, and understanding.